ref. That's he got the ball.
Yes, everybody, welcome back to the Irish Hotspur. Jack and Dave here to give a pundit reaction, and this time it's going to be one of our very own. Paul Robinson had some scathing comments about Daniel Levy just after, by the way, our recent game against Manchester City. He wrote, "It's been a long time," or he said in an interview, "It's been a long time." When asked about Daniel Levy, fingers are being pointed at Daniel Levy. I think recruitment-wise, you look at the players they've got, the injury problems they've had this season have been well documented. The players Ange hasn't had at his disposal. So then we do get to the January window. It's nothing new. The window opens the 1st of January. We know we're short in certain areas, so go and get those players. As soon as the window opens, go and give the manager the players that he needs. You take 2 or 3 years. Spurs fans want trophies. This place craves trophies. Daniel Levy, goes and gets win now managers. He goes and gets Antonio Conte and Jose Mourinho. Both of them will say that they weren't backed and with win now players. So now Ange Postecoglou, they've stuck with this manager, and they want to see him through with his philosophy, the way that he plays. What summed it up for me was that the bid that they put in, allegedly, for Marc Guehi at the end of the January window, if you really want a player of that quality that's got 18 months left on his deal, you go to Crystal Palace as soon as the window opens. You don't put a bid in. You ask how much they want for him, and then you either pay it or you don't. And that's where they've fallen down numerous times for me, in backing the manager with the squad depth and the players that he needs. Paul Robinson, very much slamming his fist down on the fact that managers like Ange Postecoglou have been let down by not bringing in win-now players, experienced players of real quality. And he seems to be exactly upset with, this last January window, where a lot of us did say we knew that the problems were there. We knew Ange Postecoglou had maybe not enough depth in certain areas. We knew he had huge injury issues that need to be addressed. And yet they waited so long to even bring in any players of any kind, and to even put in a late bid for Marc Guehi. So Paul Robinson just sort of feeling like, Daniel Levy is kind of the one where the pressure needs to be pointed towards again. And I think he's saying something that majority of Spurs fans would agree with, that, just even this recent January window would be a good example of still the same problems that have been occurring year after year with the backing of the manager.
Yeah, and I really like this from Paul Robinson, Jack, actually, because it's something that I've been trying to convey for a number of years now at Tottenham, that quality of players do matter, especially with the type of managers you're bringing in now. Even Postecoglou, he is a win-now manager, and we've seen that, at the start of this season, where he was talking about trophies, all last season talking about trophies. And I think many Spurs fans probably got Postecoglou mixed up with maybe being a bit of what would you call it?
Yes,
a project manager.
Yeah.
And I'm glad it actually comes from someone like Paul Robinson, a player that many Spurs fans respect. He was a good goalkeeper for Tottenham Hotspur. Because I think, a lot more people will sort of buy into what he's saying because he's been a professional in and around the game. So I think it's great coming from him. But there's a number of things there that I think Paul Robinson has hit the nail on the head. He speaks about the quality of players coming in here, for the likes of the win now managers, which I think is something I've always said. Even if we were selling Harry Kane, you've got to replace that with absolute quality. Quality matters, especially at the Premier League, especially at European football levels. You're talking about fine margins, where quality on the pitch does matter, regardless of the manager that you've got out. We're almost bringing in managers here and asking them to perform miracles by bringing in, average players consistently for them to work with. And then when it doesn't work out, we almost blame them. We're going, well, you're supposed to be a winner. You're supposed to make it work. But what we all sort of fail to realize is that we don't back them in these transfer windows, and it's becoming a huge problem. And as we're seeing since Pochettino, the decline of the squad, and if you look at our league positions, it's getting worse and worse and worse as it goes on, with the less and less quality that we seem to be bringing in here. Then he also touches on the Marc Guehi transfer bid, which for me, I smell a rat straight away. I think when I look at it, Jack, with the Marc Guehi one, he's absolutely spot on. If you were serious about going and getting that deal done, you go in at the start of the window. And the reasons why, because you give Palace then a chance to be able to go and replace them. When you go late in the window, it's not a replacement that they were expecting to make. And then all of a sudden, you're giving them 2-3 days towards the end of the window to go and try and get in a centre-back of a certain level for the absence of Marc Guehi. And I think Crystal Palace at that point goes, well, if we sell him and we don't get this right, we could end up suffering a relegation battle here. So we're better off keeping him here until the end of the season and maybe taking a little bit of a hit. But I think the reason why we went late in the window for Marc Guehi is so that Palace didn't have room to negotiate a better fee and stuff like that. We tried to catch them with their pants down almost and bullied them into the deal. So I would argue, is that will Palace be very, very reluctant to sell to us now come the summer because of how we handled that? So I think Paul Robinson was absolutely spot on there, Jack. And then when it comes to backing Ange Postecoglou in these transfer windows, it's another thing that I've tried to hit the nail on the head. People keep telling me, shut up, Dave, stop being negative, just back it. And I've tried to say, but it's not backing Ange, so I can't back the window. You're setting up Ange for failure. Kinski, I think everybody will agree, a great prospect for the future. But that's a deal we could have went and gone and got this summer. We could have brought in a keeper of more quality, to come in here, because at the end of the day, Kinski did cost us. He cost us the FA Cup, and he cost us some league games as well, which didn't really alleviate the situation because of his shot stopping ability. Then you bring in the likes of Matisse Tell. If we would have bought a better striker or gone after that position with a bit more gumption in the January transfer window, that player probably would have put more points on the board already. And then all of a sudden, you're probably looking at a different end to the campaign. So it's just the continuous misses. Like, you look at the last two windows, we've probably got two absolutely spot on in terms of senior players, Solanke and Danzo. But outside of that, over two windows, that is nowhere near enough to push this squad on, considering we've got one of the youngest squads in the Premier League, Jack. So I think Rob spot on.
I think Paul is absolutely, spot on about Daniel Levy, especially when it came to this year. I think he, is right by pointing out that pretty much everybody knew about Spurs' problems going into the January window. Yet it seemed like by their strategy, by their recruitment sort of philosophy, that wasn't the case. They kind of went into it pretty relaxed, seemed to be, sort of taking their time, like the Marc Guehi sort of bid, very last minute. Paul's saying, like, why on earth are these people not just getting all this done straight away, at the beginning of the window? Because the problems, like you said, were so well documented before even the January window opened. He was basically pointing out that why didn't you already have, pretty much the idea of who you wanted to bring in, what sort of players you needed to bring in, where maybe you can make sacrifices here and there, because we know it's a January window. You're not going to be able to address every problem. But I think he's making a very fair point that a lot of us Spurs fans and just general football fans would expect it, that if you kind of had already an idea of what your problems were going into the window, why isn't it that you were addressing them then, straight away, especially if you even had dreams of even fantasies of bringing in someone like a Marc Guehi? Why aren't you just doing that then straight away in the beginning of the window? And if you're going to bring in someone of that quality, I think he was probably even surprised and shocked that Spurs even were capable of even thinking about bringing in a player of that sort of quality in a January window. But even if they were, why are they going about it in that sort of manner? It's just all wrong. And it also just screams, kind of either ignorance, incompetence, one of the two, where it's just maybe Spurs are just ignorant to the fact that, they think they can kind of do it this way. And we've seen this for years, Dave. This isn't new to Ange Postecoglou. We've seen this happen to Jose Conte, and that was also as part of his point, is this is kind of some of the same baffling recruitment philosophy and strategies that we've seen before.
No, absolutely spot on. And like with the Marc Guehi one, okay, then if you have the 60 odd million to go in and put a bid for Marc Guehi, so then that money's there. So then why haven't we conducted a lot more business in the January transfer window, or actually put money, on the table for a lot of these players to come in here, good bids for these players. So I think, it's just mismanagement again, but it almost feels like, Jack, we're always trying to save a buck, on the footballing side of things, on the pitches. And at the end of the day, what Tottenham fans care about. Yes, it's nice to have a nice stadium to go to with nice food and drink facilities, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, we care about the standard of football on the pitch. And it feels like that we're always cutting corners when it comes to the football side, but when it comes to the business side, we're the first to do absolutely everything. When it comes to doing initiatives, we're the first to do everything. Like we seen one come out today about some UN Green thing now in terms of football. We're the first to do that, first to venture into that. But when it comes to the football side of things, we're all constantly trying to save a buck. And that's why we didn't land someone like Marc Guehi this January transfer window, Jack, because we left it so late to try and bully Palace into a deal. And it's just not good enough from Tottenham Hotspur. And this is where fans get really annoyed with the ownership. But unfortunately, he continues to escape the criticism, and it's everyone else on the footballing side that keeps paying the price. And, I feel like it's almost like a bit of a magic trick. It's like, get that manager out. There's a lot of noise around the club now. Bring in a new one. Quell the noise down a little bit. Let's see what he can do. But what fans are waiting for is to match the same ambition on the football side as there is on the business side. And if you can do that, you've got a club that everyone's envy of.
Is Paul right by suggesting that when it comes to big, high quality players like a Marc Guehi, you kind of do have to do it at the beginning of a window, pretty much? You have to sort of go in and say, listen, what's your price? What will it take in order for you guys to basically let him go? Is that how you have to kind of approach it? Do you think, because obviously we don't know, but that's what he seems to be suggesting, that bigger, high quality players, you can't go about it the way that Spurs have been. Maybe with a younger player, a guy that maybe isn't the number one and the pecking sheet of a squad, you can sort of go about it last minute, do some bully negotiation tactics. Do you think like maybe that's where also Spurs struggle to get these high quality players, because you have to be a bit more forgiving? You have to go to the club and say, listen, what will it take? What will be your price? You can't bully them into something. Maybe that's part of the problem with Spurs.
Well, there's where Paul Robinson is absolutely spot on, Jack. Big deals, for big money, they take weeks to negotiate. You're talking about how many years is the payment spread over, how much of it is up front and how much of it is incentives, etc. There's a lot of complexities around these deals, signing on fees with the player, their wages, contracts they're happy with. They take weeks to sort of gather. So when you're going in with 3 days to go at the end of the transfer window, and the only reason why we've done it is because it's Crystal Palace. If it was a club of a bigger stature, bigger reputation, we would never have even thought about going to do that. We only done it because we thought Crystal Palace, we can bully them like we've done in years gone by.
Yeah.
But it didn't work out that way. Unfortunately, Palace are smart enough to know,
their
well, if
best
you
player.
sell Marc Guehi, you're going to put us in big trouble in the Premier League, and almost could cost us our Premier League status. So that's definitely not going to happen right now. We'd rather hold on to him. But if you had done it at the start of January, you also give them time to negotiate a really, really good price for themselves, a price that they're really happy with, but also time to go and find a replacement in the January transfer window. And that's something else that has to be factored in. The fact that they have to have time to go and find a replacement. It's not just as easy, oh yeah, give us that money, we're going to sell them. They have to have the replacements. When you talk about planning, structures in place, scouting departments, that's what they're all there for. And then for them to go and negotiate the right deal as well for them, that also takes a bit of time. So that's why you got to try and start negotiating these big deals at the start of the window rather than later on in the window, Jack.
Yeah, I think he hit the nail on the head about that part, that you do kind of have to go to the club, and sort of be a bit more approachable. You have to sort of meet them in a way, halfway to some degree. You're taking their best player. You have to have this sort of negotiation strategy, at least I think, of sort of, listen, this is what we're looking for. This is why we need this guy. This is why we're willing to sit down at the table with you. What can we do basically to get this deal over the line? What can we do to make you happy to get this deal done? Because obviously it's not comfortable taking someone's best player. But if that's what you need, and that's what you feel like the guy that you're bringing in, that you've identified, you have to sort of have that soft approach, I think, to the club, and just say, listen, what will it take for us to be happy, at the end of this deal, for us to, feel like you can let him go? And Spurs have no way to do that sort of strategy. They are the ones to want to bleed you dry, in some way. They want you to feel like you've been done over, sadly. Yeah.
Well, there's two other, massive parts too, completing a transfer, Jack. The second one is we don't have experience in these big, massive negotiations in terms of getting in these big game-changing players. We don't have that experience at Tottenham. You look at a lot of our recruitment, it's been young. It's a lot of young recruitment. We don't have the experience to go to these clubs. So then, part of it, we almost offend them with how low we go in or where we start our negotiation. Because again, even though we're looking at a player and we know and we're going, he's a game changer, we're still looking to save a buck every time. Yeah. And at some point, I can understand if you're trying to bring in a squad player, you don't want to overpay. Fine. I'm okay with that. Do your negotiations. But when it comes to a player that is going to be a game changer, you stump up the asking price or get as close to as you possibly can. And you also pay the wages. And that's Tottenham's biggest problem there. When anyone comes to Tottenham Hotspur go to them, they are setting themselves up for really tough negotiations. They almost have to wrestle with themselves. But I'm going to have to try and concede a little bit here if I want to get this deal done with Tottenham. Sometimes when you have ambition and you want to try and bring in game changers, it doesn't work like that. It's about you being the smart guy and going, in the long run, this one's going to pay back tenfold. I'm paying what you ask for. We don't have that ability to be able to do that. We always want to try and win a negotiation. For instance, if a player comes to us and says, I want 90 grand, Daniel Levy will go, well, I'll give you 87 grand. And then if you hit 50 appearances this season, I'll give you another 2. So I'll get you to 89 grand, but not 90. Do you know, he's always looking to be pathetic and win a deal. And that's where we let ourselves down. That's why we don't sign big players at Tottenham Hotspur.
You're so right about that part where, we're forcing them to concede something. It should be the other way around. We should be the one that, should probably eventually be forced. All right, whatever it takes, let's get this done. We'll take the extra 5,000, off, the price or whatever. We should be. It's I think Paul Robinson is spot on, everybody. And also, if you looked at some of our previous, sort of pundit reactions and stuff, very different, sort of vibe, from Paul that we gotten from Michael Dawson, Aaron Lennon, some of the other sort of former players. So thought it was interesting. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below of his words, and we'll see you next time. Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.